The air was thick and heavy with humidity when I decided to enter the abandoned tunnel. The daylight was slowly fading, and the dark atmosphere that prevailed there made my heart race. I, Jessica, a young photographer in search of inspiration, couldn't resist the temptation to explore that place shrouded in urban legends. They said many who entered never returned, but curiosity had always been a powerful force within me. It's just a tunnel, I told myself, injecting courage into my being. With my camera hanging around my neck, I stepped into the darkness. The walls were damp and covered in graffiti, and the echo of my footsteps seemed to fade into an emptiness. With each step I took, a strange feeling settled in my stomach, as if something or someone was there, watching me. I looked back, but all I saw was the entrance to the tunnel closing behind me, as if it wanted to swallow me. "You're being ridiculous, Jess. It's just your fear," I murmured, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. As the darkness deepened, I began to notice something peculiar. It was a light, faint at first, but growing with each step. It emanated from the end of the tunnel, pulsing like a heart. Maybe this is what I needed, I thought, feeling a rush of hope. The light seemed inviting, as if promising me answers, or at least a new perspective for my photographs. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing back to me. The silence was deafening, but the light continued to shine. Drawn to it, I moved forward, despite the feeling that something was off. The temperature dropped, and a chill ran down my spine. "You can do this, Jess. Just a little further," I encouraged myself. As I got closer, I noticed the environment around me seemed to change. The shadows on the walls danced as if they lived and breathed, and a soft whisper began to fill the space. "Jessica, Jessica." It was as if familiar voices were calling my name, and my heart raced. I felt trapped between curiosity and fear. "Who's there?" I asked, but only silence answered. The light was now much more intense, almost blinding. When I finally reached its source, a feeling of euphoria washed over me. It was as if I had found an oasis in a desert. I looked around, admiring the beauty of what seemed to be a source of pure, almost magical light. "This is incredible," I murmured to myself, trying to capture the image with my camera. But as I pressed the shutter, the light pulsed stronger, and a wave of heat and cold surged through my body. Then something changed. The light that had once seemed so welcoming now felt oppressive. A primal instinct alerted me. "Jessica, no!" I screamed internally, but it was too late. An invisible force seemed to pull me in, and the bright light was now turning into a trap I couldn't escape. "No! What's happening?" I shouted, trying to pull back, but it was as if the tunnel had a life of its own, holding me in its grip. The sense of freedom I sought dissolved, and in its place, a dark truth began to form in my mind, as if I was about to discover something I had never wanted to know. "What is this light?" I whispered, feeling I was about to cross a threshold from which there would be no return. The darkness around me began to close in, and despite the terror, a part of me couldn't resist the call. What was I really searching for? Could the answers I wanted be on the other side? With my heart racing, I moved a little closer to the light, unaware that the choices I was about to make would change my life forever. The light at the end of the tunnel seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a promise of something I didn't exactly know what it was. As I approached, I noticed the walls around me starting to transform. The shadows danced frantically, forming indistinct figures that seemed to twist in a macabre choreography. The air was thick with a palpable mystery, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. "It's just an illusion," I murmured to myself, trying to ward off the fear that was beginning to settle in my chest. But strangely, the whispers began to intensify. "Jessica, Jessica." The voices were like distant echoes, calling my name with a familiarity that left me uneasy. The sound blended with my racing heart, and I hesitated for a moment. Something inside me wanted to turn back, but curiosity and the hope for a new beginning pushed me forward. When I finally reached the light, a wave of warmth enveloped me, as if I were being welcomed back to a familiar place. But as soon as my eyes adjusted to the brightness, the feeling of comfort turned into horror. The light was not an exit, it was a trap. "No! What is this?" I shouted, but the voice was lost in the vastness of the tunnel. The light seemed to devour everything around me, and I realized the space was closing in, as if the walls were moving to trap me. I made a sudden movement backward, but the same bright light that had drawn me in now surrounded me, making escape impossible. The shadows began to coalesce into more defined shapes, and I saw distorted faces, empty eyes watching me with a terrifying intensity. A chill ran down my spine, making me tremble. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice shaking, but there was no response. Only the echo of my question faded into the heavy air of the tunnel. "Jessica, you have finally arrived," a voice whispered behind me. I turned quickly, and there was a hooded figure, its face hidden in the shadows. My heart raced in my chest. "Who are you?" The question came out in a thin voice, almost a desperate whisper. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure replied in a tone that mixed disapproval and sadness. "But now that you are here, there is no going back." Its words sounded like an alarm bell, and reality began to crumble around me. The tunnel walls pulsed, and the light seemed to intensify, as if ready to swallow everything. "I just wanted inspiration," I tried to justify, but the figure only shook its head slowly, as if disappointed. "Inspiration? Here? You don't understand. This place is not for the living. It is a prison for the lost." The words echoed in my mind. What had I done? What had brought me here? The desire to capture the beauty of the world in my photos had led me to a place where beauty was merely a distorted reflection of horror. "I don't want to stay here," I shouted, desperation dripping from my voice. "It's not a matter of want, Jessica. It's a matter of necessity." The figure stepped closer, and I could feel an oppressive presence. "You will be a part of us now, a new soul to join those who have already departed." I felt a penetrating chill as the shadows around me began to move, almost as if they wanted to take hold of me. My mind spun in search of an escape, a plan, anything that could free me from this prison. "No, I won't be part of this," I screamed, panic overtaking me. The light seemed to pulse even more, and I knew I had to act. But how? What could I do in the face of such a fate? The light that had once seemed so inviting was now a disturbing reminder, an echo of a call that I, in my naivety, could not resist. As we crossed the barrier between what I knew and the unknown, I found myself in a dark, claustrophobic room, surrounded by objects that seemed to tell stories of interrupted lives. The air was heavy, as if every breath I took was saturated with despair and regret. I looked around, trying to process the scene. Every corner of that room seemed a testament to tragedies. There were framed photos of smiling people, their faces lit up by genuine smiles, but something about them unsettled me. As I approached, I noticed a strange mark on their hands, a symbol I couldn't identify, yet it emanated a feeling of familiarity, as if I had seen it before. What was that mark? What had happened to those people? A sudden noise made me freeze. Heavy footsteps echoed against the concrete floor, and adrenaline surged through my body. My heart was pounding so hard that I was sure it could be heard miles away. Whispers seemed to intensify, almost as if the place were alive, watching my every move. "Jessica," I could hear, but it wasn't a familiar voice. It was an agonizing call, a lament that seemed to rise from the walls, making me feel even more surrounded. Trying to stay calm, I hid behind a pile of objects that seemed to have been abandoned in a moment of desperation. My gaze focused on the photos up close, Each one told a tragic story, fragments of memories that were now becoming part of a macabre collection. It was as if those souls, once so full of life, had been captured and transformed into relics of a nightmare. "Once again, I feel you here," a hoarse and deep voice whispered, breaking my trance. The sound was so close that I could feel the vibration in my chest. The figure that appeared before me was shrouded in shadows, its face hidden beneath a dark hood. The presence radiating from that figure was oppressive, and the thought of being discovered sent a chill down my spine. "It's time to collect," the voice continued, almost like a mantra. "The next must be chosen, another offering to strengthen our collection." Terror engulfed me. What did that mean? What was happening here? The figure began to inspect the objects, and I knew I needed to act quickly. If I was discovered, I wasn't sure what could happen. With a silent effort, I started to move, trying to find an exit. Every step I took was a challenge, a battle against the fear that threatened to paralyze me. "Please don't find me," I thought, repeating to myself. But fate seemed to be against me. A small object, a piece of broken glass, rolled under my foot, and the sharp sound sliced through the silence. The figure immediately stopped, and I felt its penetrating gaze in my direction. "Who's there?" The tone was so cutting that I thought about surrendering to despair. My heart raced, and I knew there was no turning back. The only chance for survival was to run, even if it meant leaving behind all that horror, all that confusion that now surrounded me. With one last look at the photos, I realized those lives had been interrupted just like mine could be. I couldn't let that happen. I needed to escape, even if it meant facing the unknown once again. Whatever was waiting for me out there was better than what I was leaving behind. I squeezed behind a pile of objects, trying to hide from the hooded figure that was inspecting the room. My heart was pounding so hard that I feared it could hear it. Every move it made seemed calculated, each step an echo of a power I didn't understand. The hood covered its face, but the posture was imposing, as if it was in command of something much greater than me. "More souls, more offerings," the figure murmured, its voice low and dragged out, as if it were speaking to itself. I need to prepare the next. Terror enveloped me like a dense fog. What did that mean? Offerings? Souls? I wasn't sure what was happening, but the feeling that I was next was becoming more and more real. The room was filled with objects that seemed to have belonged to other people, memories frozen in time. There were toys, clothes, and photographs, all tangled up with the same darkness that surrounded me. "Jessica!" Whispers lingered in the air, a distant echo that seemed to call me. It was my name, but it wasn't a familiar voice. It was a voice that carried pain, loss, and despair. I could feel that each object in the room had a story, an echo of lives that were gone, and I was about to become part of that narrative. I tried to stay still, but the tension was unbearable. And then, without warning, my foot found a small object on the floor. A loud crash resonated, and I found myself facing the figure, which immediately turned, the shadow of the hood darkening the environment even more. The silence that followed was deafening. "Who's there?" the figure asked, its voice now laden with a palpable threat. I didn't know what to do. The instinct to run mixed with the paralysis of fear. I was trapped in a nightmare, and there was no visible escape. "Please," I murmured, not knowing if I was addressing the figure or fate itself. "I just want to go home." My words sounded like a whisper, almost inaudible. The figure began to approach slowly, like a predator that had found its prey. "Home," it repeated, the voice now blending with low, macabre laughter. "Here, you have no home. Here, you are an offering, a new soul for our collection." Those words cut through me like sharp blades. Panic took over, and in a desperate move, I ran from the pile of objects toward the door that seemed to have vanished into the darkness. The sound of my footsteps echoed, and the figure began to follow me, its heavy steps resonating like thunder. "You can't escape, Jessica!" the figure shouted, its voice now distorted, as if it were being pulled by a supernatural force. "This place is yours now." I couldn't believe what was happening. The tunnel I had explored so eagerly had now become my prison. The light that had initially drawn me and now seemed like a trap, and I was engulfed in a reality I could never have imagined. "No, I won't stay here," I shouted as I ran, fear propelling me forward. I knew I needed to find a way out, but every step I took seemed to lead me deeper into an endless abyss. The tunnel was shifting shape, as if it were reconfiguring itself to trap me. I looked back once and saw the figure closer than I would have liked. The hood was now falling, revealing a face I couldn't identify. It was a mask of shadows and rage, and I didn't dare stop to find out who it was. Panic prevented me from thinking clearly, and the only thing I could do was run. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, hoping that somehow this would break the spell that held me. But the only response I received was a cold, deep laugh that echoed off the walls of the tunnel like a grim warning. "You are already part of us, Jessica. Accept your fate." I had no idea how to escape, but one thing was clear. The light that had guided me to this place was not a sign of hope, but an illusion that had led me down a path of shadows and terror. And as I ran, with the figure behind me, I knew my struggle was just beginning. The hooded figure approached slowly, and I couldn't tear my gaze from its face. My heart raced when I recognized those familiar features. They belonged to Lucas, my childhood friend, the one who always knew how to make me laugh on the darkest days. But now his smile was twisted, his eyes glowed with a disturbing intensity, and the aura surrounding him was pure malice. "Jessica," he whispered, his voice heavy with an echo that seemed to come from another world. "You shouldn't have come here. This place is not for you." I tried to step back, but my body was paralyzed, as if an invisible force kept me glued to the ground. "Lucas, what happened to you? What is this place?" The words came out in gasps, laden with a mix of confusion and fear. He moved even closer, and I could see the mark on his hand, the same one I had seen in the photos. A circular scar, like a seal of approval for those trapped in this dark world. "This tunnel, it's not just a tunnel, Jessica. It's a passage. Here, souls are collected, shaped, and offered. You have no idea of the power this brings." "Power? This is a nightmare." My voice trembled, but indignation began to mix with terror. "You don't have to do this, Lucas. We can leave together. I just want to go home." He laughed, but it was an empty laugh devoid of joy. "You don't understand. There is no escape. Everyone who comes here stays. Do you really think you can leave so easily? Look around you." He gestured to the objects surrounding me. Photos, toys, mementos of lives that had been consumed by that darkness. They also thought they could escape, but now they are part of me, part of who I am. A wave of despair hit me. "Why are you doing this? I can't believe you want this for me. You were my friend." "Friends." He paused, as if pondering my words. "Friendship is a weakness, Jessica. Here we are more than friends. We are a new form of life. And you can join us. You have incredible potential, and I can show you the way." I stepped back, searching for a way out, but the darkness seemed to close in around me, each movement only intensifying the pressure. "Never. I don't want this," I shouted, anger overpowering fear. "I'm not like you." Lucas smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "You still don't understand. Here, you have no choice. You will become part of this, a form of eternal life. You just have to accept." The idea of succumbing to this new reality was unbearable. A part of me wanted to believe he was just lost, that there was still hope to save him. But the other part, more rational, knew he was no longer the Lucas I once knew. "I can't join you, Lucas. I can't be part of what you've become." My voice sounded firmer, despite the weakness I felt inside. He moved closer, the expression on his face now one of desperation. "So you prefer to stay trapped here, alone? Do you really think you can escape? The tunnel is not just a path, it's a trap, and you've just fallen into it." I felt a chill run down my spine. A mix of anger and despair overcame me. "I will fight, even if I have to face you." Lucas hesitated, the dark look transforming into a flicker of doubt. "You can try, but the darkness here is stronger than you think. Once you enter, there's no turning back." Without thinking, I started to run, his words echoing in my mind. The shadows seemed to stretch out to grab me, but I wasn't going to give up. Adrenaline pulsed through my veins as I searched for a way out. "I am not an offering. I am Jessica, and I will get out." As I ran, memories of my life before the tunnel flashed through my mind. The laughter, the dreams, the freedom. I couldn't let all of that be lost. I needed to find a way to escape that trap. Adrenaline pumped through my veins as I ran through the tunnel, my bare feet making a dry sound against the cold, damp ground. The echo of the hooded figure still resonated in my mind, their words about collecting souls, repeating like a terrifying mantra. The tunnel that once seemed a curiosity, a place to explore, was now transforming into a labyrinth of nightmares. The light that once drew me in with its warm glow now pulsed threateningly, as if aware of my presence and deciding to play with me. With each step I took, the light seemed to pull away, as if being sucked away from me. "No, no, no," I whispered, my voice a desperate echo lost among the cold walls. I couldn't let this end like this. When I finally reached the entrance of the tunnel, a wave of hope enveloped me. But looking at the light, I realized it was no longer the same. It wasn't an exit, but rather a pulsing portal, an entrance to something much darker. My hands trembled as I approached it, and in a moment of desperation, I remembered the mark on my hand. The same mark I saw in the photos of the missing souls, the same one that now seemed to glow with a deep red hue. Before I could think, an invisible force pushed me forward. I crossed the light, and in the blink of an eye, the tunnel disappeared. I was standing on a street I knew well, but something was very wrong. The houses were distorted, as if shaped by a disturbed artist. The sky above was a whirlpool of dark clouds and lightning that seemed to dance in a symphony of chaos. "Jessica?" a familiar voice called, and when I turned, I saw a figure that looked like my mother, but her face was covered in shadows. "You're back." Her expression was a mix of relief and sadness, and it left me unsettled. "Mom, what's happening here?" My voice trembled as I tried to comprehend the scene before me. "You didn't realize?" she replied, her voice now filled with deep sorrow. "You've become a soul catcher. You're trapped in this cycle, Jessica. The tunnel isn't an escape, it's a prison." My hands instinctively went to my left hand, where the mark pulsed, now warm to the touch. "No, this can't be true," I shouted, denial echoing in my mind. "I just wanted to be inspired. I just wanted to be free." "Freedom?" my mother laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was a bitter laugh, full of pain. "The freedom you seek is beyond this place. You need to confront the truth." Her words echoed within me, and for a moment, I saw my reflection in a surface that once appeared to be a puddle of water, but now was a distorted mirror. What I saw made me recoil. My reflection was grotesque, with the same mark on my hand and a smile that wasn't mine. "That's not me," I screamed, but the image only smiled back, as if it were enjoying my despair. "You need to decide, Jessica. Continue in this cycle or fight to break it," my mother's figure said, her voice now echoing like a whisper in the wind. "But no, the fight won't be easy." The portal behind me began to pulse again, the light dancing as if calling me back. But I couldn't return, not like this. I needed to understand what this new reality meant. I had to face the truth about myself and the choices I made. I took a deep breath, feeling the pressure of the moment building inside me. I had to fight, and the battle began now.